my dear ones. How are you all? I missed you so much. Hope you're doing fine and staying safe. Today's lesson is about the pedigree analysis. What is the importance of a pedigree? From a pedigree, we can first know if the studied trait is dominant or recessive. We can also know the localization of a particular gene. When we talk about the localization, we mean if the gene is located on an autosomal chromosome or if it is located on a gonosomal chromosome or a sex chromosome. We can also determine the risk for a couple to have a diseased child. So from the pedigree, we can calculate the risk for a certain couple to have a diseased child. We can also determine the genotypes of the family members from the pedigree. First of all, our first topic that we're supposed to be discussing is how can we know if the diseased allele, which is the mutant allele, whether it is dominant or recessive. Here is an example. So this is a pedigree showing the shaded members that are affected by a certain disease, or they are showing a trait to be under study. So as you already know, the circle represents a female, and since this circle is shaded, so this female is affected, while this female, for instance here, is not shaded, so she's not affected. Similarly for the male, so a box usually represents a male since he's not shaded, so he's phenotypically normal, while this one here is shaded, so this represents a diseased male. First of all, the easiest thing to do is to take a look into or choose a couple, both of which are normal, like the one you can see here. This is a male and his wife is also normal. However, they have two diseased children, a male and a female. From this study here, you can directly tell that for this diseased child to be diseased, so she has inherited at least one, the diseased allele from at least one of her parents. Why shall we say at least one of her two parents? This is to take into consideration that the studied trait might not be autosomal, and in this case, if it's not autosomal, then one copy of the disease might be enough to show the studied trait. So this is what we're supposed to be writing. Since both parents are phenotypically normal, we're talking about these two parents in this case, yet they have a diseased child. In this case, they have two diseased children. Then the diseased allele was masked by at least one of the parents by the normal dominant allele. So from this observation, you can directly know that the diseased allele was masked in this case by the two parents, which means that they are showing their normal allele, which proves that the normal allele is dominant over the recessive diseased allele. After proving that the normal allele is dominant in this case and the diseased allele is recessive, we're supposed to symbolize the letters. Now, you can choose your own symbols, of course, but I've chosen capital N to be the symbol of the normal allele, which is dominant. So we're supposed to put normal, dominant, allele, okay? And the small d, which is represented by a lowercase since it is the recessive allele, it is the symbol of the diseased recessive allele. In case the diseased allele was dominant, here is a pedigree. As you can notice, in every generation, so this is the first generation having this member affected. This is the second generation having these two members affected. This is the third generation also having two members affected. Similarly for the fourth and the fifth generations. So as you can see that every generation is having at least one member affected. يعني the affected individuals are present in every generation. Moreover, every affected child has at least one of the parents affected. So for these two affected daughters, their father is affected. For these affected children, their mother is affected. So every affected individual is having one of her or his parents affected. So this proves that the affected allele is dominant. So as we said, since every diseased individual has at least one diseased parent, and since the diseased allele is expressed in almost every generation, so this allows us to know that the diseased allele in this case is dominant over the normal one. In this case, we are supposed to symbolize the capital D, the uppercase D, for the diseased dominant allele, and we are going to symbolize the small or the lowercase letter for the normal recessive one. Another way in proving the dominant allele. Okay, so I've chosen this pedigree because it shows us an autosomal dominant and another one showing an autosomal recessive trait. As you can see, I've told you before that it's the easiest way is to search for two members that are not affected, having an affected child, to tell that the diseased allele in this case, in this pedigree, is masked by the normal allele, which means that in this case, the norm dominates, or the normal allele dominates the diseased allele. In this case, you can also search for the same clue, but this time you have to search for two parents, both of which are affected. However, their child, or having one of their children, not affected. So this leads us to the same result, but this time you can notice that the normal allele was the allele which was masked in the two parents, and they are carrying the normal allele. However, they are expressing the affected one, which proves that the affected or the diseased allele is dominant over the normal recessive one. So in this case, you search for two phenotypically diseased parents having a normal child, which proves that the normal allele was the allele masked in the parent by the dominant diseased alleles. And of course, don't forget to put the symbols, which are the capital one or the uppercase for the diseased and the lowercase for the normal. Localization of the gene. How can we determine the location of the gene under study? I've mentioned this in the class, as I remember. First of all, we're supposed to know that the two chromosomes X and Y, which are present at the level of the males, are said to be non-homologous chromosomes. This is because they are not having the same size, as you clearly can see. The X chromosome is the largest chromosome in comparison with the Y chromosome, which is the smaller one. What you're supposed to know from the comparison of these two chromosomes, that these two chromosomes have a matching part. This matching part is said to be the homologous segment of X and Y, which means that any gene present at this location here is going to have an allele on the X chromosome and another allele on the Y chromosome, because X and Y are homologous, so they act as if they are autosomal chromosomes. However, there is a part of X which is not homologous to Y, and this is said to be the differential region of the chromosome X, which is different from the chromosome Y. So any gene present on this fragment, on this segment of X, is gonna be present in two copies at the level of the female, because females have two homologous X chromosomes. However, this gene will be present in only one copy at the level of the male, because the male has only one X chromosome. That is to mean, for example, the color blindness gene. This color blindness gene is located here, is located in one of the regions on the non-homologous segment of X. So it is said to be an X-linked gene. This color blindness is gonna be expressed at the level of the male once it is present in one copy, and it's going to be present in one copy at the level of the male, of course, because he has only one X chromosome. So if he is having the chromosome, let me get back. If he's having the chromosome having the allele coming from the mother, having the allele which is coding for the color blindness, it is a recessive allele. However, it's X-linked, so it's located on this region. And he's gonna receive only one copy from his mother, and because he's gonna receive only one copy, so he is going to express this copy to the phenotype. So receiving one copy of the color blindness allele from his mother is enough to show this allele at the level of the male. But for the female to be color blinded, she should receive the copy of the color blindness from her mother and another copy from her father. Okay, so this is the fragment of X known as the part of X not homologous to Y. Now, with respect to the Y chromosome, it also has its own part, its differential region, which is known as the Y-linked part, or the non-homologous segment of Y. So also, any gene located on the Y chromosome, which is not homologous to X, is present in only one copy, and it is going to be expressed in one copy. So if the gene is located on the not the segment of chromosome Y, this means that only males are going to be affected because only males have the Y chromosome. Discussing the location of the gene, as we said before, the gene could be either located on an autosome. When we talk about autosomal chromosomes, this means that the autosomal chromosomes are from 1 till 22. So if the gene is located on any of these chromosomes from number 1 till 22, then it is said to be an autosomal gene, or the location of the gene is autosomal. Or it could be located on a gonosomal chromosome. That is to mean it could be located either on the non-homologous segment of chromosome Y, and as I said before, in this case, the males only are going to be affected because only males have the Y chromosome. Or in the case of gonosomal or sex-linked chromosomes or sex-linked genes, the gene can be located on the non-homologous segment of chromosome X. And in this case, of course, the risk is gonna be higher for the males to be affected because they only have one X chromosome. And in this case, we're definitely talking about autosomal genes. Or also sex-linked chromosomes, sex-linked genes could be located on the homologous segments of X and Y, and in this case, this gene is going to have two copies, two alleles, one located on X chromosome and the other located on the Y chromosome. Okay, and in this case, both males and females are equally going to be affected by the disease located on the homologous segment of X and Y. If the studied trait is autosomal, then we have to deny, there is a certain procedure we have to pass through. In order to prove that the studied trait is autosomal, we have to deny first that it is not on the gonosome. We have to deny that it is gonosomal. Yani we have to prove that it is not it's not located neither on the non-homologous segment of chromosome Y, nor on the non-homologous segment of chromosome X, nor on the homologous segment of chromosome X and Y, to prove that it is an autosomal gene. If the pedigree shows that the affected individuals are only males, yani if you're taking a look into a big pedigree where only affected individuals appear to be males, yani you cannot see any affected female in this pedigree, then you will directly know that the localization of the gene is definitely gonosomal, because if it was autosomal, you would have seen a female affected. So since there are no females affected, this disease is carried by a gonosomal chromosome. Particularly, it shall be carried by either the non-homologous segment of X or the non-homologous segment of chromosome Y. In this case, you have to deny that it is on the non-homologous segment of Y. This can be done by choosing an affected male with his normal father. Because if the male is affected and the allele is carried on the Y chromosome, this male shall receive the Y chromosome from his father. But if the father is normal, then he's supposed to give the normal allele on Y to his son, and in this case the son should not be affected. So since the son is affected but his father is not, this leads us to prove that the localization of the gene is not on the non-homologous segment of Y, but rather it is on the non-homologous segment of X. In this case, if you have proven that the studied trait or the studied gene is on the non-homologous segment of X, you have, when you are asked to write the genotype, you're supposed to remember to put the genotype on the X chromosome. So I've given you certain examples here. For a healthy male, because we said that the chromosome or the gene is located on the non-homologous segment of X, so you're gonna represent only one copy, and you are going to put this copy at the level of the males only on chromosome X, while chromosome Y won't carry any allele. Okay? If the male seems to be healthy and the normal allele is the dominant one, then the genotype of this male shall be X and Y. If the male is affected and the diseased allele is the recessive one, then his genotype is supposed to be X small d Y. Now for the female to be affected, her genotype is supposed to be X small d. If she is normal, then she might have a genotype of X capital N pure, or X capital N, X small d hybrid. So this is the way to write the genotypes, whether in case you have chosen or you have proven that the localization of the gene is on the part of X not homologous to Y. How to prove that the diseased allele is not located on the non-homologous segment of X chromosome? So we are going to prove that the studied trait or gene is not located on the X segment which is not homologous to Y. You are supposed to look for an affected daughter having a normal father. Okay, like this case. This is an affected daughter, as you can see here. And this is her healthy father. Father number 2, Roman letter number 2, 5. Okay? If he is healthy and his daughter is affected, and remember that we're talking about an autosomal, the diseased trait is autosomal in this case. Okay? And recessive, as you can clearly see. Recessive because she is affected while her parents are not, which proves that the affected allele was carried and was masked by the normal allele in both her parents. Now, regarding the localization of the gene. If we want to consider that the gene is located on the part of X not homologous to Y, then in this case, the genotype of the daughter is supposed to be XD. She shall receive XD from her carrier mother, yani the genotype of the carrier mother is supposed to be XN, XD. Since she is normal, so she is going to have an XN, but she has diseased children, so she shall have the XD. Fine. And she shall receive the second XD from her father. But if the father has an XD to give his daughter, then his genotype is supposed to be XDY. And in this case, he won't appear phenotypically normal, as we can see. So the genotype of the father based on this pedigree is supposed to be XNY, and he should give his daughter the XN, and in this case the daughter is supposed to be normal. So this proves that the localization of the gene is not on the segment of X not homologous to Y. Okay, so the affected daughter must have a genotype of XD. This is what we were discussing. And she should inherit an XD from her normal carrier mother and the other XD from her father, whose genotype is supposed to be XDY, and he shall be affected, but clearly he is not. So it's not the case. This is how we prove that it is not, or the studied trait or gene is not located on the segment of X not homologous to Y. Okay, how to prove the diseased allele is not located on the homologous segments of X and Y, يعني segment of Y which is homologous to X. In this case, you are supposed to search for a daughter and a son having a diseased allele, and you have to link their genotypes with their normal father. Let's take a look into this pedigree. When you want to prove that the studied trait is not located on the part of X homologous to Y, this is what you're supposed to be looking for. A male and a female, both of which are affected, but their father is not affected. Let's see why. First of all, this is the same pedigree. For the diseased daughter, named 4-1 in this case, for her to be diseased, and if we want to take into consideration that the studied trait is located on the homologous segment of X and Y, then her genotype is supposed to be XD. And she shall receive an XD from her normal carrier mother and another XD from her normal carrier father in this case. Fine. Her diseased brother, number 4-2, he also appears to be affected. In this case, he is supposed to have a genotype of XD-YD, and he's supposed to receive the XD from his mother, who is normal and carrier, and the YD from his father. So the father in this case will give his daughter X-d and his son Y-d. So his genotype in this case is supposed to be, the genotype of the father is supposed to be XD-YD. But look, if he is going to have this genotype XD-YD, then he is supposed to be affected, and clearly he is not. So it is not the case. I hope that this video was fruitful, and I'm going to come back with another solved exercises to train you on how to prove the topics we have discussed in this video by yourselves. Thank you.